guys, it's me, Beans1337. And today I'm gonna be making a video about the second best game on Roblox, which is Blocktales. I already made a video on the best game in Roblox in my opinion, which is fighting. You can check it out. I'm not gonna link it in the description. That's too much work. But Blocktales is a JRPG, and for those of you that don't know, a JRPG is a turn-based RPG game on Roblox. And when you think of RPGs on Roblox, you probably think of something like Blox Fruits, which is the worst thing that any person could ever think of. And I'm not even gonna give it the light of day outside of this video. And Blocktales was inspired by Earthbound, and Earthbound was released in June 5th, 1995 in North America. And Earthbound obviously inspired the instant hit Undertale, and which is also a JRPG. I'm sure I don't need to explain Undertale. You've probably already seen 1,000 videos about it. So I'm not gonna. And Blocktales is very similar to Undertale, except in its fighting style, kind of. And this video has major spoilers for Blocktales. So, if you haven't played it, you really shouldn't watch this video. But anyways, back to it. There's really nothing you need to know about the general lore about the game, except you came from the future, and you came from around 2025, which is the current year. And you're in 2010 now. But I will be going over. But I'm gonna be ranking each chapter or demo. I'm gonna be using chapter and demo interchangeably. Sorry, but I'm gonna be going over each demo, and ranking them on a tier list. And I'm mainly going to be looking at their final boss and their story, but other stuff like the cards that you can get in them and the mini bosses will be accounted for in the ranking of the chapters. But anyways, I'm skipping prologue because if I compared the prologue to all the other chapters, it would obviously be last. So I don't even know why you would think I would include prologue. You're stupid for that. But then chapter 1. It starts off where you're going into a cave, which is a shortcut to the town called Road Town, which has had a blizzard cast over it because someone stole the mythical ice dagger. And so you go to Road Town and you meet the mayor, who gives you an adventurer's ID if you help him get his assistant. Once you get out of the cave in Road Town. Which lets you get he gives you the adventurer's ID on the condition that you rescue his assistant. And after traveling through the dense snow forest, you find his assistant crushed under red rocks and dynamite, and that's where you get one of your first items, which is the dynamite, which can be used to explode red-colored rocks. It's pretty cool. It's really good in combat. It only costs like 5 SP, I think, and it does a little bit of AoE when you throw it, and it does like 5 damage. I think it's really good. You should use it a lot if you have the option to. And you use the dynamite to blow up some other red rocks that lead into the Black Rock Castle. And after going through the castle and sneaking into and fighting a bunch of loyal guards and loyal knights and crossbow crony. That's a unique name. But once you go through all of them, you get to the kitchen where all of the knights are very hungry because they aren't able to eat, and you meet the kitchen wizard. And he tells you that they're making dinner and that he needs the red potion. And you're supposed to be an assistant that he hired, and he just doesn't know that because he doesn't look at you. And the assistant was really late, and so you picked the wrong potion. You picked the Scarlet potion, stupid idiot. And you blow up the meal. Uh, and now no one's gonna be able to have dinner. Why'd you do that, bro? Um, but it makes a shrinking potion, which allows you to shrink. And you're able to go into this room to get the key to the Cruel King's lair. Um, alright, to his throne room. And despite being called the Cruel King, he really isn't cruel. The reason he stole the ice dagger is because he heard these voices. I'll get back to them in my chapter 3. But he heard these voices that told him that his kingdom was gonna die, basically, in the future. And the voices told him that you're from the future, and that you're the reason his kingdom dies, and so he tries to fight you. And you win. Uh, and because you won, his kingdom does die. So the voices were kind of right that you caused his kingdom to die, but if you just hadn't listened to them, then it wouldn't have happened in the first place. So it's kind of confusing, but anyways, his attacks, and I'm reading this from the wiki, so if any information is wrong, please let me know. I'm sorry if it's wrong. Anyways, so his first attack is Scepter Strike, and he points his scepter towards you to conjure an icy mist that implodes after a short while. He conjures it like around your entire team, and if you don't dodge, it inflicts 5 damage and frozen level 1 for 1 turn, and to all players and allies that didn't dodge it. This is his most overpowered attack. 5 damage doesn't seem like that much, but in the early game, when you probably only have like a max 15 health, it's a lot. It's a pretty dangerous attack that you should be very wary of, but he doesn't use it that often. And it's also very hard to dodge unless you just know the timing. Um, so new players, be warned. And then he has Freezing Stab, which is the attack he's probably going to use the most often. And he walks up to his target and prepares his Ice Dagger and quickly thrusts it into them. Pause. Inflicting 5 damage and frozen level 1 for 1 turn. All of his attacks do frozen. I'm pretty sure Frozen just makes it to where you skip a turn. I think. One of your turns. And it's a lot easier to block, and you can even parry it, unlike Scepter Strike. So it's an okay attack. It's basically the same as Scepter Strike, except it's easier to tell. It's easier to block, and you can parry it. Call for help makes him. And it can only be used if there's room for an enemy, and he can only have room for 1 enemy. So if you just haven't dealt with the enemy that you spawned in, he isn't gonna infinitely stack them. And he whistles and slams the scepter on the ground twice, and he summons either a loyal knight or a crossbow crony, which are enemies that you fought to get to his castle. And then finally he has Refreshing Heal, and Cruel King heals all enemies, including himself, by 1 HP and gives them defense to level 1 for 2 turns, which the defense just makes it where they take less damage. Pretty easy boss fight, pretty good introductory boss fight in my opinion. I think that chapter 1 is pretty good. I think the story is a little bit lackluster. It's just not my type of story in my opinion, but if you like that, it's a really good story, and the Ice Dagger is really good. And so it's probably like this. It's the second best chapter in my opinion. And then there is chapter 2, where you're tasked to get the Venom Shank from the rugged rainforest. And so what you do is you go to you take a plane to the rugged rainforest, and you go through an anthill. You do your shrinking potion. You go through an anthill to get across the other side of a little fence. Anthill is kind of long. I feel like this chapter is one of the longer ones, but it might just also be long because there's a lot of stuff in it, so it might just feel longer. But and once you get out of the anthill, you have to do a little bit more walking. before you go into Turtleopolis. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Where the mayor, which is the sword guardians basically watch over the swords. Um, where the mayor is getting kidnapped by this guy named Griefer and a gorilla. And you have to save the mayor to get the Venom Shank. And so you go through, like the rugged rainforest to find him jumping over like a little pond, and jumping over a pond, and he blocks the way off of the bomb blocks. Remember from chapter 1? And you have to break them, and once you do, you have to fight the Kimono Dragon. And when you beat her, she says that, oh, she only fight you because she thought you were the one that puts the blocks there. And she's really sorry. And she gives you the rocket boots in return. And the rocket boots can let you fly over little areas. Like, then there'll be an indicator for when you have to fly over an area by, like, 2 black feet on the ground, kind of. But anyways, once you get the rocket boots, you're able to cross the river and traverse through the rugged rainforest more until you find Griefer, the mayor, and the gorilla. And that's when the mayor reveals that Griefer is his son. And Griefer notices you and says, "Bro, why are you trying to stop me?" And he fights you. It's a pretty easy fight, not gonna lie. And then you see it. You get an iron sword that lets you cut through these big bushes that lets you follow Griefer. But Bigfoot steals it because you hit him with a car while you're traveling to the rugged rainforest. And you have to get it back from Bigfoot. Bigfoot has like a surprising amount of HP for this point in the game, so he can be a little challenging, but it's not really that hard. He doesn't have that hard he doesn't have that hard of attack patterns. And then you get to the mango tree where you see Griefer, and he has kind of like a Tai Lung backstory where his dad said that when he grew up he would be the sword guardian, and he just never became the sword guardian, so he wants to steal the swords so that he can become the sword guardian. A lot like Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda. Good movie, by the way. And he takes the sword and he fights you with the sword. It's basically the same as his previous fight, except he can use the Venom Shank now. And then he can hear the voices too. The voices actually told him about you too, and they said that that you were gonna stop his plan to become the sword guardian. And so he says he goes a little bit goofy and says that the voices were like setting him up for failure, and he stabs himself with the Venom Shank, and it turns him into the. I'm pretty sure it's a botanical horror, but I'm not sure. That's not the real name, but I don't remember what the real name is, and that sounds cooler than it is. So I'm gonna call it a botanical horror. But anyways, you have to fight him, and the botanical horror. Let me just look for its. Here's really quickly. I can't seem to find it. That's what it's called. So, sorry guys, it took me a while to find it, and I found out his real name is bubonic plant. Botanical horror is a lot cooler though, so I'm gonna keep calling it that. But botanical horror all of its attacks are apply poison. So if they hit, all of its attacks apply poison. And its first attack is big bite, and the plant moves towards the target and strains its neck before snapping it. And it does 8 damage and gives poison for 3 turns. And then Tendril Flurry, which is a multi-hit attack. The plant moves towards its target and burrows itself into the ground. And once it's in the ground, after a second or two vines will shoot from the front and back sides of the target, respectively, at rapid speed. With each vine attacking once, and each vine does 4 damage. And then Venom Charge, the plant roars, and using a turn to give itself charge along with fast for 3 turns. Charge makes it do more damage, and fast makes it have an extra attack, I'm pretty sure. And a plant rush, it only occurs when it's charged or it has attack up, and it'll be performed under such conditions if possible. And so, whenever it has charge, it'll always, or attack up, it'll always try to use this move. And the bubonic plant walks up to its target and fires its lower 2 frontal tendrils at them 3 times before thrusting its arm at them 6 times, with each hit inflicting 1 damage. And then Acid Rain, bubonic plant shoots 5 poison balls into the air that randomly target players, and if you're solo, all of them target you. One at a time, raining down shortly after the 5th one shot out. So once he shoots out all 5 of them, then they start raining down, and each ball inflicts 2 damage. The poison is pretty annoying, but other than that, it's manageable. It's a pretty high step in difficulty. But a really cool boss fight. I like the lore for this chapter a lot more than I like the lore for chapter 1. But still pretty cool. Sorry for the cut. I will be skipping chapter 3 for now. Because I have opinions about it. It's not chapter 4, chapter 3 for now. And I'll be going back to chapter 3 later. But chapter 4 is my favorite chapter. Basically, you need to go into the desert to go to the Temple of the Red Sun where the Firebrand is. The Firebrand doesn't have a sword guardian, and some people don't even think it exists. And as you get into the desert, you wander through the desert until you find another temple. It isn't the Temple of the Red Sun. And these people seem to be, judging by cave drawings on the wall, these people seem to be very peaceful. Just kind of doing their own thing and farming. And this is where you meet the goat, the Great Philosophy. I cannot pronounce the Great Philosophy. I know she no Philiopolis. And he's the goat. He's a genie in a bottle. And you wish for his bottle, and he gets really angry at you. And when you fight him, it's a really cool fight. He makes a dummy, basically. He makes a dummy that wishes things for you. So, like, one of the dummies wishes, I wish that they were rich. And the attack is a multi-hitting attack that spawns a bunch of coins at a golden statue. And then there's one that says, I wish for a new car. And it makes a car, like, he runs directly at you. It's a really cool fight. It's really unique. And when you win, you get the, sorry. When you win, you get the ship in a bottle, which lets you travel over water. Pretty cool. And then you use it to get out of the temple and find these pirates that are planning a mutiny against their captain. And you beat them, and you find the entire pirate camp, and Captain Trotter and his first-hand man Calypso. Captain Trotter says that they're trying to adventure into the Temple of the Red Sun to find find all the riches in there. And since you guys are going to the Temple of the Red Sun, you make an alliance. Um, and you go out and you get into Vermilion City. Definitely not a Pokemon reference. Um, and you're able to get pretty cool cards in there, like Night and Ball. But unless you're going for a Ball build, I wouldn't recommend getting either of them because spoiler, the final boss is flying, and if you're going for a Night build, the only damage you can do to it is through Sword Toss. So I wouldn't recommend getting them until after you're done with the chapter. Um, and then so you solve all the puzzles for the pirates, and they get angry at you for solving the puzzles because they're like, "Oh yeah, look at this new hotshot coming in here, solving all the puzzles for us." And you beat all four of them that try to, they get angry at you. And then Calypso finds y'all fighting, and she's like, "What are y'all doing here?" Uh, and she, "You need to stop fighting. The Temple of the Red Sun opened up. Y'all did something." And then you go to the Temple of the Red Sun, and you start exploring, and you see murals of sacrifice to the firebrand on the temple walls, which is really strange. And as you venture deeper, Captain Trotter realizes that the murals of the sacrifice are there too. And then the floor falls underneath you, and you fight like the temple guardian, which is kind of like you know what the Sphinx statues look like? Its face looks like that, and then it just has two hands that it uses to fight you. Pretty cool fight. Um, then once you beat him, um, you fall down to this, like you basically fall into hell. There's like a pool of lava everywhere. All the surfaces are charred and stuff. Pretty cool. And it's only you and Trotter and Calypso that you can find. But eventually, you find the rest of his crew, and the rest of his crew is dead. And Captain Trotter is really sad because the reason he wanted to get his money was to give it to them so that they didn't have to commit to lives of piracy. But now that they're all dead, it doesn't really matter. He gets really, really sad. But you and Calypso keep adventuring, and eventually, you guys get to the firebrand. And Captain Trotter's there too. He just kind of like is able to teleport there. And Captain Trotter says, "Wow, there is so much gold there, but what does it matter if I can't give it to the crew?" And he starts slowly inching towards the firebrand, and he crashes out on you, bro. He gets really angry and says that you shouldn't grab the firebrand, and he starts thinking that you're trying to sacrifice him to the firebrand. And Calypso's like, "Bro, that's literally not what he's doing, gang." Um, he like says that you're both trying to plan a mutiny against him, and that um, none of them is. If we're both going out, I'm taking you with me, basically. Um, and you fight Captain Trotter. It's a pretty cool fight. His gimmick is that whenever you hit him with like a sword attack, he becomes resistant to your sword and weak to your ball. So, pretty cool fight, really. Shows off the fireman really, really well too. But I'll get into that in chapter 3. I have a lot of issues with chapter 3. And so eventually, when you beat him, he's like he starts crashing out more, and he's like, "Argh." And he tries to attack Calypso. And oh yeah, he also talks about hearing the voices from the firebrand that are telling him that they're planning a mutiny against him, and he needs to stop it. And so he tries to attack Calypso, and Calypso pushes him off into the lava on accident and kills him. And then she gets really, really sad, and she realizes, wait, and that was a sacrifice to the firebrand. And then the ancients spawn, which is the god that the ancient people were sacrificing themselves to. And the ancients is a It's such a good boss, bro. I love him so much. He's my favorite boss in the entire game. Um, and he only like summoned because the soul that like let him that died, Captain Trotter, felt just like treachery and betrayal when he died. So that's just like, and so that's what spawned in the ancients. And ancients has a lot of attacks. He's a flying enemy. He's the only flying boss in the game so far. So you can't use your sword on him unless you have sword toss, which is kinda annoying, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. And so the ancients' attacks are wind up to obliterate, and the ancients fly towards their target and spin their left arm in a circle twice, dealing 7 damage um, per um, per per hit, and it's really delayed. It's really hard to block. And then there's beam, and then the ancients curl their arms up where they start shaking from their sheer energy, and then sinks right after their upper arm rises upward. They'll fire a crackling beam at their target, inflicting 14 damage and confusion for 2 turns after hit. I will talk about confusion in the chapter 3, but just know it's the worst effect in the game, and I think it should be removed. And then there's a call for help, and the ancients summon 2 vessels, and the ancients cannot be damaged until all of the vessels are killed. And keep in mind that the ancients are positioned in the middle, of the 2 vessels, so you can use your rocket, and even though it won't damage and you use it on the ancients, even though it won't damage the ancients, it'll kill the 2 vessels. So pretty good way to get rid of them. And then there's restoration, which is if the ancients use call for help, but they can't spawn any more vessels due to the amount of enemies that he can't have 4 vessels. He only have 2. He will instead use this move and restore 4 HP to all enemies. And then there's Fireball, and the ancients will toss a ball of fire at their target from their right hand, inflicting 10 damage and burn level 1 for 10 turns to the target, and doing whatever damage the selected target took to all other party members, unless said target is a summon from a call like Red and Blue. And then there's the Ultra Beam, and the ancients curl up their arms, and after a small while of orange glowing aura swirling into them, they rapid fire 19 lasers, inflicting 2 damage and dizzy level 1 for 2 turns. What am I talking about? Oh yeah, dizzy is the other effect that I think should be removed from the game. I'll probably talk about it a lot more in the chapter 3 section, but confusion is pretty. Dizzy is just like the better version of confusion, I'm pretty sure. For 2 turns, it gives dizzy for 2 turns. It doesn't stack, and its attack can be blocked as super credit, but it's better avoided by having invisible, dodgy, or 2 defense via cards defend or using cherry pie. And then the darkness. The ancients close the eye and meditate for 2 turns. The screen darkens, the attributes and health of the enemies are hidden, and all status effects are hidden. And once the ancients are brought down to half HP, it disables energy, sword energy, for the rest of the battle. So you can't use the swords that you have, which is really annoying, but I think it's fine. It doesn't really matter. It makes the boss a lot harder, and I think that's pretty cool. The story for this chapter, impeccable. The boss for the chapter, impeccable. And I think it earns its spot as the best chapter in the game. Then there's chapter 3. I don't like chapter 3. I hated it so much. Chapter 3, you're getting the Ghost Walker, which its sword guardian is Telemon, and you need to get it in the Haunted Mansion. And so, after taking a train to get there, the train gets robbed of a bunch of bandits, and you have to fight the bandits off with red and blue. And then green and purple come in, and they're red and blue's father, and they send the criminals to the train because they're trying to kidnap red and blue from Nubador, which is their uncle, to indoctrinate them into a life of crime, and they don't want that. And so you have to beat red and blue, or not red and blue, purple and green with red and blue. It's a really cool fight, and it gives a lot more depth to these characters. And once you get off the train, red and blue give you the call card, so that's pretty cool. And then you make your way to the manor by fighting, and you fight the undead while you make your way to the manor. The undead are basically just better versions of enemies you've already seen, so not that special. Once you make your way to the manor, this like vampire guy gives you a tour around the manor, and then he has to go somewhere and to not follow him. And so you follow him, and you get sent into the ghost dimension, where you meet the ghost wizard, which is the kitchen wizard from chapter 1. And he says that he'll be able to help you get the Ghost Walker if you help him make his meal. And so after you get all the ingredients for his meal, he's like, yeah, take this ghost potion. You'll be able to get past a horrible monster that lives down there. But be careful. If you touch the ghost walker and you're not pure of soul, you instantly die. It's very important for this chapter. And so you go downstairs and you make it to the ghost walker. And like the foolish, like the idiot that you are, you touch the ghost walker and you die. And when you wake up, you see Builder Man saying he's trapped in there also. The only way to get out is by making your soul pure. And so you start walking around your mind, and Builder Man is just yapping about imagination and how Roblox is the best thing ever. You know, stuff that you would have probably imagined Builder Man would say. And then you come across a orb that leads to a place where a bunch of mannequins are. And if you talk to the mannequins, they have really greedy thoughts. Like, you don't, your inventory size is only 10 in the game. And one of them says, "Why is it only 10?" You know you can pick it up. You just have to. And also, something along the lines of, "Why should let's see and take the swords? You got them. They're rightfully yours." And then you fight Greed. This chapter has the most mini bosses. I'll be going over them, but I'll just be like explaining their character, not their moves. And Greed, he's the most ignorant of the three emotions. He doesn't recognize that he just wants literally everything in the world. Plain and simple. Once you beat him, you know, you don't feel greed anymore, so you don't feel greed anymore, so you're not gonna so you're not gonna try and withhold the swords or take more than you need or stuff like that. And then you have to fight Isolation. Isolation has never seen anything before, never seen anyone before. And when you fight her, it's a pretty cool boss fight. And he mentions that that Builderman, it starts to bring out the hints that Builderman isn't all as what he seems. Pretty weird, huh? And when you fight her and you beat her, you know that your crippling loneliness isn't going to be a problem on your journey anymore. Too bad most people aren't doing it alone. And then you have to fight Fear, which instead of being the scary one, it's actually the the, the scared one, and he's scared that you and Builderman are gonna kill him, and that Builderman is using you, and he's not what you think he is. But I mean, you already came this way to get me, so your mind's probably already made. And then once you beat Fear, you're gonna be 100% brave and not be scared of anything. And so you're gonna be able to take fights on head and toe and not just be afraid all the time. And then Boaterman is like, "Yay, you did it! Your soul is pure now. There's no bad emotions." And then you collapse to the ground. And he's like, "What's wrong? What happened? You beat all the emotions. Your soul is empty, susceptible, manipulatable, and is all mine." Or something like that. And he turns out that Builderman isn't actually Builderman, and it's Hatred, and he was just using you. And Hatred, oh my god, I hate it so much. I definitely didn't steal this theory from another YouTuber. No, I wouldn't do that. But I think Hatred is just in all of the swords, and that's the voices of the people who take the swords here. And it just manifests this way in you because you have the most swords that anyone has probably ever had. And so that's just a way it manifests in you. And Hatred is a boss fight. Only has 4 moves. Botanical Horror had like 7 or 5, I think. And the Ancients had like 10. But Hatred only has 4, and it really only has 2 because it only uses 2 of them. One of them really rarely, and the other one right after the really rare one. But anyways, let's go over its moves. So, it has Corruption. Corruption. Hatred grabs its mouth using both of its hands and opens it wide, and it launches 3 red spherical orbs made of corrupt energy toward the target and closes its mouth. Each orb does 4 damage and inflicts 3 turns of confusion. For those of you that don't know, confusion, I missaid it earlier, I'm so sorry. Confusion is the better version of Dizzy. While Dizzy makes it to where you just have a chance to not move for a turn, Confusion makes it to where you have a chance to hit you or an ally for 1 turn. So you're either doing damage to yourself or one of your allies for 1 turn. This is just actually the worst thing in the game. And they really just only added it because literally every JRPG has a mechanic like that. And they all suck. There's never a good way to implement it. And the detection of when you blocked, for all the characters in this chapter, because all of them are 2D and drawn, well, at least when you're in the Mindscape. All of them are 2D and drawn out until being able to judge when they're going to attack is so hard. And these balls move so fast, so it's so unpredictable. Like, I'm pretty good at dodging. I at least don't get hit fully by them. Because I knew that if I got hit by one of them, the run was basically over. At least on my first attempt. If I got, in my first playthrough, if I got hit by one of these balls, the run was basically over. And it's just horrible. It just actually is horrible. I hate it so much. I can probably go on and on about why it needs to be removed, but they're probably not gonna, because literally every JRPG has a confusion mechanic, like Pokemon or I don't play that many JRPGs. And then there's PK Thunder, seriously. And then there's PK Thunder, and Hatred gasps two times before it shifts into a form resembling an orbital cannon with an eye before unleashing a massive thunder shock from the sky and shifting back to its normal form. And it does 12 damage if it hits and pierces the fence. It uses this move the most, and it's still really annoying, but it's not as annoying as Corruption. But still really annoying. It does so much damage, especially for what time period of the game you're in. It does so much damage. It's so annoying if you get hit by it. And then Charge Outburst, which is undodgeable. And basically, Hatred shakes and converts its face by shifting itself and curling up to a floating ball, and then using the charge turn on itself. And then the very next turn, it releases a powerful blast of outburst energy, doing 60 damage any player or ally caught on the attack. After that, it spins around and lands on the ground before going back into its normal form. And this attack can only be dodged by having invisible or dodgy effect. And dodgy is only given by the Ghostwalker, I'm pretty sure. So it can only be available to you. It can only be dodged by having invisible. And you know what thing is invisible during a fight? The Ghost Potion. And this is where it leads into one of my other critiques of the chapter. In Demo 1, hold up. The Crew King uses the Ice Dagger for his refreshing heal, which heals him and any of the allies that he has on the field by 1 HP. And the Ice Dagger, whenever you use it, heals you and any allies you have on the field by 10 HP and restores some SP. So the Crew King represents the Ice Dagger pretty well in his attacks. And then there is the Griefer. Griefer, he doesn't do as good of a job, but whenever he uses the Venom Shank, it's kind of like Crew King's Icy Mist, where he makes the area, and after a second it explodes, and if you don't dodge, it does a couple, 3 damage to you and applies poison for a couple of seconds. But other than that, it's the exact same. The normal Venom Shank makes a little slash, and all enemies on the field take 2 damage and have poison for a couple of turns. So it's basically the same thing. So Griefer does a pretty good job of representing the Venom Shank. And then in Chapter 4, Captain Trotter uses the Firebrand exactly like you use it. Stabs it into the ground, and it's kind of like Crew King, Icy's Mist. Literally everything relates back to Crew King. Everything relates back to Crew King. Kind of like Crew King's Icy Mist, where if you get hit by it, then does 5 damage, and lights them on fire for a couple of seconds. So, all the chapters have good representation of what the sword does in their final boss fight. Except for chapter 3, because the final boss of chapter 3 doesn't have the Ghost Walker. And so, they had to give it some representation somehow. So, what did they do? They gave you the Ghost Potion. And, well, the Ghost Walker applies Dodgy, which is basically, it's just a better version of Invisible. Invisible makes it to where attacks phase through you, but attacks phase through you. Dodgy makes it to our attacks phase through you. Invisible, at least for the Ghost Potion, makes it to our attacks phase through you for 2 turns. Dodgy can make it go forever, I'm pretty sure. There might be a limit, but I haven't found it. It goes forever until you attack. So you can, if you use the Ghost Walker, it can be impossible to die, but you just can't kill anything, because, you know, if you attack, you stop becoming invincible. But you can use it to set up. So the Dodgy is really good, but Invisible, after you use the Ghost Potion, you can't move for 2 turns. And the Ghost Potion is literally only used to dodge this one hatred attack, and you would never ever use it anywhere else again because it's objectively worse than the Ghost Walker. They really should have just made it to where hatred was somehow able to channel the power of the Ghost Walker in some way. And instead of the thing that they did to make it to where you had to use the Ghost Potion to try and get a feel of what the Ghost Walker would be like, they should have just made him use it. Replaced his charge outburst. Not charge outburst. The thing that he does to charge up his big attack. And they should replace that with him using the Ghost Walker. And then if he has the dodgy effect, he does an attack that gives him more defense for a couple of turns or more damage, and then he attacks you with it. They should have done that instead of what they did, forcing you to use an objectively worse version of the Ghost Walker in the fight to try and like demo it. I don't think they did that well. And then Hatred has Call for Help, and Hatred contorts into a demonic face, summoning apparition from the ground, and it's skipped if all enemy slots are full. So you can have 2 operations on the ground at one time, I'm pretty sure. And that's essentially all that Hatred has. I think Hatred, I don't really like the art style that they used for the Mindscape. I think Greed, Isolation, and Fear and Hatred look cool, but Greed, Isolation, and Fear are good mini bosses, and Hatred isn't a good boss. And it's not in my opinion. He has annoying moves, and a move that forces you to basically become inebriated for 2 turns and not be able to do anything. It's really annoying, and Hatred just kind of ruins the entire chapter for me. And the chapter doesn't really even have that good of lore. You just make yourself a good person, and that's it. It's like the freaking train section is more entertaining than the rest of the chapter, and that's saying something because it's not even like the main idea of the chapter. It's just a little side thing because every chapter has a little side thing at the beginning or middle or something. It's just a little side thing, and it's already giving way more lore. It's already way more entertaining. It has way more fair bosses than the the actual boss. And so I think they really shouldn't have done this with the Ghost Walker. I feel like they should have made it because Shidetsi mentions that undead guard the manor, so they should have made it something with the final boss, something related to the undead, but they didn't. And I think that's a really huge missed opportunity. Also, the kitchen wizard mentioned some giant monster down there, and there isn't. And I feel like there originally was, but then they decided to make the Mindscape instead. They just deleted that line. And the big monster was originally gonna be the boss for the chapter. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think chapter 3 is overall that good. If chapter 3 didn't, or not chapter, yeah, chapter 3. If chapter 3 didn't exist, I think chapter 2 would be the worst chapter, but not in a way that it's bad, but more in a way that, like, I like the other chapters more than chapter 3. Not, I like chapter 3 less than the other chapters. If you know what I'm talking about. It's like your least favorite flavor of ice cream. Like, sure, it's your least favorite, but it's still ice cream. You're still gonna eat it. But there's other flavors that you like more. That's what chapter 3 feels like. Chapter 4, or not chapter 3, chapter 2 feels like. Chapter 3 just feels like they used expired milk and cheese to make the ice cream. But anyways, that's the video, guys. My ranking of all of the chapters in order from best to worst is the chapter 4, chapter 2, chapter 3, and not chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 1, chapter 2, and then chapter 3. Anyways, I hope you liked my video, guys, on another really cool Roblox game. I'm gonna make a video about Forsaken eventually. I don't really like it that much, not anymore. Though I'm gonna make a video about Forsaken eventually. Okay, it's coming. For those of you gamers out there. Okay, bye bye, guys.